Cordelia the Crude by Wallace Thurman. Physically, if not mentally, Cordelia was a potential prostitute, meaning that although she had not yet realized the moral import of her wanton promiscuity, nor become mercenary, she had nevertheless become quite blasé and bountiful in the matter of bestowing sexual favors upon persuasive and likely young men. Yet despite her seeming lack of discrimination, Cordelia was quite particular about the type of male to whom she submitted. For numbers do not necessarily denote a lack of taste, and Cordelia had discovered after several months of active observation that one could find the qualities one admires or reacts positively to in a varied hodgepodge of outwardly different individuals. The scene of Cordelia's activities was the Roosevelt Motion Picture Theater on 7th Avenue near 145th Street. Thrice weekly the program changed, and thrice weekly Cordelia would plunk down the necessary 25 cents evening admission fee and saunter gaily into the foul-smelling depths of her favorite cinema shrine. The Roosevelt Theater presented all of the latest pictures. Also, twice weekly, treated its audiences to a vaudeville bill. Then, too, one could always have the most delightful physical contacts. Cordelia had not consciously chosen this locale, nor had there been any conscious effort upon her part to take advantage of the extra opportunities afforded for physical pleasure. It had just happened that the Roosevelt Theater was more close to her home than any other neighborhood picture palace, and it had also just happened that Cordelia had become almost immediately initiated into the ways of a Harlem theater chippy soon after her discovery of the theater itself. It is the custom of certain men and boys who frequent these places to idle up and down the aisle until some female is seen sitting alone, to slouch down into a seat beside her, to touch her foot, or else press her leg in such a way that it can be construed as accidental if necessary, and then, if the female is wise, or else shows signs of willingness to become wise, to make more obvious approaches until, if successful, the approached female will soon be chatting with her baiter about the picture being shown, lolling in his arms, and helping to formulate plans for an after-theater rendezvous. Cordelia had, you see, shown a willingness to become wise upon her second visit to the Roosevelt. In a short while she had even learned how to squelch the bloated, lewd-faced Jews and eager middle-aged Negroes who might approach, as well as how to inveigle the likable little yellow or brown half-men, Embryo Avenue sweetbacks, with their well-modeled heads, stickily plastered hair, flaming cravats, silken or broadcloth shirts, dirty underwear, low-cut vests, form-fitting coats, bell-bottomed trousers, and shiny shoes with metal-cornered heels clicking with a brave, brazen rhythm upon the bare concrete floor as their owners angled and searched for prey. Cordelia, 16 years old, matronly mature, was an undisciplined, half-literate product of rustic South Carolina, and had come to Harlem very much against her will with her parents and her 6 brothers and sisters. Against her will, because she had not been at all anxious to leave the lackadaisical life of the little corn-pone settlement where she had been born, to go trooping into the unknown vastness of New York. For she had been in love, passionately in love with one John Stokes, who raised pigs, and who, like his father before him, found the raising of pigs so profitable that he could not even consider leaving Lintonville. Cordelia had blankly informed her parents that she would not go with him when they decided to be lured to New York by an older son who had remained there after the demobilization of the wartime troops. She had even threatened to run away with John until they should be gone. But of course, John could not leave his pigs, and John's mother was not very keen on having Cordelia for a daughter-in-law. Those Joneses have bad mixed blood in 'em, so Cordelia had had to join the Gotham-bound caravan and leave her lover to his succulent porkers. However, the mere moving to Harlem had not doused the rebellious flame. Upon arriving, Cordelia had not only refused to go to school and refused to hold even the most easily held job, but had also victoriously defied her harassed parents so frequently when it came to matters of discipline that she soon found herself with a mesmerizing lack of home restraint. For the stress of trying to maintain themselves and their family in their new environment was far too much of a task for Mr. and Mrs. Jones to attend to facilely, and at the same time try to control a recalcitrant child. So, when Cordelia had refused either to work or to attend school, Mrs. Jones herself had gone out for days' work, leaving Cordelia at home to take care of their 5-room railroad flat, the front room of which was rented out to a couple living together, and to see that the younger children, all of whom were of school age, made their 4 trips daily between home and the nearby public school, as well as see they had their greasy, if slim, food rations and occasional change of clothing. Thus Cordelia's days were full, and so were her nights. The only difference being that the days belonged to the folks at home, while the nights, since the folks were too tired or too sleepy to know or care when she came in or went out, belonged to her and to, well, whoever will, let them come. Cordelia had been playing this hectic, entrancing game for 6 months, and was widely known among a certain group of young men and girls on the avenue as a first-class chippy. And she and I happened to enter the theater simultaneously. She had clumped down the aisle before me, her open galoshes swishing noisily, her 2 arms busy wriggling themselves free from the torn sleeve lining of a shoddy imitation fur coat that one of her mother's wash clients had sent to her. She was of medium height and build, with overly developed legs and bust, and had a clear, keen light brown complexion. Her too slick, too naturally bobbed hair, mussed by the removing of a tight black turban, was of an undecided nature, i.e., it was undecided whether to be kinky or to be kind, and her body, as she sauntered along in the partial light, had such a conscious sway of invitation that unthinkingly I followed, slid into the same row of seats and sat down beside her. Naturally, she noticed my pursuit, and thinking that I was eager to play the game, let me know immediately that she was wise, and not the least bit averse to spooning with me during the evening's performance. Interested, and I might as well confess intrigued physically, I too became wise, and played up to her, with all the fervor, or so I thought, of an old-timer. But Cordelia soon remarked that I was different from most of these sheiks, and when pressed for an explanation, brazenly told me in a slightly scandalized and patronizing tone that I had not even felt her legs. At 1 o'clock in the morning, we strolled through the snowy bleakness of 144th Street between Lenox and Fifth Avenues to the walk-up tenement flat in which she lived, and after stamping the snow from our feet, pushed through the double outside doors and followed the dismal hallway to the rear of the building, where we began the tedious climb of the crooked, creaking, inconveniently narrow stairway. Cordelia had informed me earlier in the evening that she lived on the top floor, 4 flights up east side rear, and on our way we rested at each floor, and at each halfway landing rested long enough to mingle the snowy dampness of our respective coats, and to hug clumsily while our lips met in an animal kiss. Finally, only another half-flight remained, and instead of proceeding, as was usual after our amorous demonstration, I abruptly drew away from her, opened my overcoat, plunged my hand into my pants pocket, and drew out 2 crumpled $1 bills, which I handed to her. And then, while she stared at me foolishly, I muttered good night, confusedly pecked her on her cold brown cheek, and darted down into the creaking darkness. 6 months later, I was taking 2 friends of mine, lately from the provinces, to a Saturday night house rent party in a well-known whorehouse on 134th Street near Lenox Avenue. The place as we entered seemed to be a chaotic riot of raucous noise and clashing color, all rhythmically merging in the red smoke-filled room. And there I saw Cordelia, savagely careening in a drunken abortion of the Charleston, and surrounded by a perspiring circle of hand-clapping enthusiasts. Finally fatigued, she whirled into an abrupt finish and stopped so that she stared directly into my face. But being dizzy from the calisthenic turns and the cauterizing liquor, she doubted that her eyes recognized someone out of the past. Visibly trying to sober herself, languidly began to dance a slow drag with a lean-hipped, pimply-faced yellow man who had walked between her and me. At last he released her, and seeing that she was about to leave the room, I rushed forward calling, "Cordelia," as if I was not yet sure who it was. Stopping in the doorway, she turned to see who had called and finally, recognizing me, said simply, without the least trace of emotion, "'Lo, kid," and without another word turned her back and walked into the hall to where she joined 4 girls standing there. Still eager to speak, I followed and heard one of the girls ask, "Who's the Dicty kid?" And Cordelia answered, "The guy who give me my first $2."